Right now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about snare drum tuning. This snare drum head that's been on this drum for a little while is getting worn. So I'm going to change the head and I'm going to take you step by step through what that looks like. We're going to start by taking off the old head. So we're going to back out all of our tension rods. I'm going to use my DWL key. I like this key because it's got a little bit of a handle here, and that gives me some leverage to spin the key. There are thousands of different types of drum keys you can use. Some people use a drill with a drum key drill bit, but this is easy. It fits in my pocket, and I also put it right here in my bass drum a lot, so I always know where my key is. So right now we're going to start off by backing out some of these tension rods. So I usually start backing the next one out, and then once it gets to where it's finger tight, then I start loosening with my fingers as I'm backing the next one out with the key. So you'll notice that this snare drum has these old school claws, and this is just an old school, older way of doing things. And this drum is a new drum, but I like this aesthetic. This is my Spirit of New Orleans titanium snare drum made by Ron Danette. But when I'm dealing with these claws, I just take them off and start putting them right here on top of the drum on the snare. And then voila, there's all of our claws and tension rods. Then I'll pick this up and put it somewhere safe. Then I usually take a cloth and just go around here and clean up the bearing edge a little bit while we've got the head off. And sometimes you may even have some stick shavings in here or some dust. So sometimes you may want to even take the drum and just turn it upside down, tap it lightly to get some of that dust that might have accumulated. So now we have a nice clean bearing edge to put our new head on. So right now I have a fresh Remo Ambassador head. I like to use an Ambassador. Some people will use an Emperor. You can also use a clear head with a black dot. I personally like the Remo coated Ambassador because it's durable, sounds great, it's a classic, and also it works really well with brushes. Before we put the head on, I like to put 2 little strips of tape right here on either side of the logo. And what this does is this muffles things just a little bit, but I like to do that from underneath so that my brushes don't get caught up in any tape. So this is a trick that I learned from Jeff Hamilton. Jeff will actually use a Band-Aid, but I like to use 2 pieces of tape, and I'm going to show you how I do that now. So I like to use white gaff tape. Gaff tape is similar to duct tape, but it's a little less sticky with the residue. So this stuff, gaff tape, you can build houses with it, you can fix drums with it. This is great to have, and you can get this from Tour Supply, and I have gaff tape on hand all the time. All right, so what I like to do is take a little bit of a ribbon, just about this long, and then I tear this in half, like this. And then I make one little ribbon like that. And the purpose for this is it does something to the surface area so that this amount of tape without this ribbon does not do much. But with this ribbon, it adds just a little bit more muffling. All right, so I've put the old head back on the drum so that I have a work surface. So now I'm going to take this ribbon, I'm going to put it just on one side of the Remo logo, and then I'm going to take my other ribbon, taking a piece of tape, putting a little fold in it like that, and I just call this a little tape ribbon, and then put another one just like that on the other side of the Remo logo. And then I'll make sure that I've got this nice and pressed in. We don't want it coming undone when this is underneath and inside the drum. But then this way, I've got a nice clean surface and my brushes don't get hung up in this tape ribbon. And then we can also lay a big fat snare on this and it doesn't get caught up in the tape that's muffling the drum. All right, so now I'm going to put our new head on, and I like to make sure that the logo is lined up with the badge on the drum. And then we're going to put our rim back on. And now we're going to start putting all of our claws back on. Now, a lot of drums already have these holes built into the rim. This is an old school way of doing things. But if you have claws, you just start putting them on and then getting things finger tight. All right, so once we have our tension rods back on, finger tight, then I start going around and just making sure that everything is engaged, right? Now, I know a lot of people talk about going crisscross, and we can do that as well, but right now I just want to make sure that everything is just a little bit above finger tight. And you can hear the glue crackling. And that's just the glue in the collar of the head. And you're going to hear that crackle as we start to bring things up. So now that we're getting everything up to above finger tight and things are starting to get a little bit seated and settled in, you want to go around and start tapping at each tension rod. And I like to start tapping around here. You're going to hear they're not all even yet. So you want to get each tension rod the same or as close to the same as you can get them. So right now we're going to start tapping so we can hear where we're at. But to do this, we want to take and turn the snares off so we have the tom sound so that the snares aren't interfering with the pitches that we're hearing. So you can hear it's not completely off. Everything's a little close, but we're going to dial it in a little bit more. So what I like to do is tap around. So you'll notice that this one is lower. Usually what you get is, whatever the pitch is, the one directly across from it is usually the same pitch. So you'll notice that these two are a little lower. This one's a little higher. These two are a little lower. So I'm going to take these up higher. That's pretty close. We're going to keep dialing it in. Let's see where we're at right now. Let's turn the snares on and let's tap the drum. So that's where we're at. As you can hear, it still needs to come up a little bit. That was a little low and a little raspy for me. So right now I'm going to keep bringing it up till we get to a higher pitch. And then we're going to experiment with different ways of tuning. But right now we're going to go for our higher pitch tuning first. So you can hear this one's a little lower now. So I'm going to bring this up a little. So this one's a little lower. So I'm going to bring both of these up. That's still a little low. This one sounds a little low to me. So now we'll see what we have when we turn the snares back on. And then two, you can press in on the head to seat the head a little bit. So now that I've taken it up even a little higher, let's hear what that sounds like. So now I'm going to go ahead and play this drum at this higher tuning. I'm going to add a little muffling to this. So this is a muffler made by SNARE Weight, and it's a leather strip with some magnetic parts of it, and you can fold it in or you can open it up and get more of a muffled sound. I like to fold them underneath like this and then put it right here. Now that we've tuned our snare drum at a pretty high tension and we've gotten the head nice and seated and settled in, we're going to start taking it down to a medium tension. And I tend to play my snare in a more medium area for general purpose. Sometimes I'll crank it a little higher when I'm smacking backbeats with Galactic. Sometimes I'll tune a wood drum a little lower if I'm playing some more buzz roll stuff and some more of the New Orleans second line stuff. So we started at a higher tension. Right now we're going to bring it down closer to a medium tension. So I'm just going to tension down about a quarter turn on each of these tension rods going around counterclockwise. And then I'm going to go around one more time. And that's going to get us into the medium tension range. So now let's take a listen to where we're at on each of these tension points, and we'll see if we're close and if anything needs to be fine-tuned. So that's not too bad. So I heard that this one might be a little lower, so that one's a little lower. So I'm going to come up with this And remember that the one across from it is usually about the same. So now let's hear what we have. Still a little low. Still a little low. So I'm going to go with that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to get it as close as you possibly can. Now let's turn the snares back on and see what we have. That's still cranked. So I'm going to come back down even more on it. Let's see what we have here. That's getting to about where I want it to be. So maybe what I'll do is back these snares off just a hair. Now you can hear there's a little bit of extraneous ring in there, so I'm going to put our snare weight back on. I'm going to bring these snares up just a hair. Now I'm going to play this drum in this range and see how it sounds. So now I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more and get into a little bit more of a medium tuning that's just a little bit lower. And this is a tuning that I might use for some of the New Orleans second line stuff and when I'm doing a lot of buzz rolls. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to try to get them as close as you possibly can. That's a little loose, so I'm going to bring that back up. All right, so now let's hear what this sounds like, getting into a little bit more of the snare drum, buzz roll, New Orleans second line kind of stuff. So while we're in this lower medium tuning right now, I want to show you what I do to prepare the head for playing with brushes. When you have a brand new fresh head like this, it can sound pretty sandpapery when you start playing brushes. So what you actually want to do is wear that down just a little bit by scraping the brush across the head to wear down some of this grit just a little bit. I don't know if you could hear that, but I could hear it getting mellower as I did that. So you want to wear some of that down a little bit, because what you don't want to have happen is when you're brushing on the head and then you go up this way and you get a very abrasive kind of sound. You don't want that. You want a nice smooth brush sound. So now I'm going to play a little bit for you with brushes at this medium lower tuning. So now we're going to go for a much lower tuning, a much deader tuning. And the way that I'm going to accomplish that is I'm just going to back everything down, get it real low, and I'm going to put this big fat snare drum muffler on top of the drum. All right, let's see where we're at. I'm even going to go a little lower than that. And believe it or not, I'm going to go even a little lower than that. Now, you can hear all that rasp, all of that erroneous overtones. Take a couple of these down a little bit. That's starting to get about where we want it. Now you can hear that ong and all that honk, and you might be thinking to yourself, wow, that sounds pretty awful, but I know exactly what it's going to sound like when I put this big fat snare drum on top of it, and it's going to really dial all that in, and we're going to get this really thuddy, low snare drum sound that we're going for. So this is this big fat snare drum muffler, and it's made by Big Fat Snare Drum, and it's basically just a sheet of Mylar, and it's got a little rubber ring around it. It's basically a head that's been modified into this muffler, and when we put this on top, we get a nice fat snare drum sound. So I hope this video has given you some different ideas on how you can tune, and has maybe given you a little insight onto what I'm doing when I'm tuning a snare drum for different situations. So experiment with some of this. You don't always necessarily need to get a new snare drum. I obviously like having lots of different snare drums, but you can tune one drum in a bunch of different ways and use it for a bunch of different styles of music. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified when I'm coming out with new lessons. Also, don't forget to check out StantonMooreDrumAcademy.com, where I have tons of information up there that's going to help you become a better drummer sooner. So thanks for checking this out. See you guys down the line. Yeah, you're right.